All right, we're going to be talking about some angle vocabulary. We are going to be putting all the words in one spot for you to look at, talking about what the definitions are and what they mean. So the first one we have is vertical angles. These are angles that are across from each other. They are equal to each other. The next word we have is angles on a line. So we're going to take a definition down. Angles on a line are going to be angles that form a straight line. Now, angles that form a straight lines are 180 degrees, so this means they add up to 180 degrees. All right, angles on a point. These are angles that form a circle. So angles that form a circle, circles are 360 degrees, so that means they add up to 360 degrees. All right, complementary angles. This might be a new word. These are angles that form a right angle. Angles that form a right angle. Right angles are 90 degrees, so that means they add up to 90 degrees. All right, last one, supplementary angles. These are going to be angles that add up to 180 degrees. So yes, they are the same thing as angles on a line. So these angles are going to add up to 180 degrees. So here are the vocabulary words that you're going to need to know, and you're going to need to know what they mean also. Now let's take a look at the next section here. The next section is going to have us name the relationship of those angles. We're only going to be looking at complementary, supplementary, vertical, and adjacent. Those are the vocabulary words they want us to choose from. So the first one, we have two angles. They're across from each other. Angles that are across from each other, we call them vertical. Number two, these angles right here, they form a straight line. Anything that forms a straight line are called angles on a line, yes, but that's not one of our choices, so we're going to use supplementary, which is the same thing. Number three, these are angles that are across from each other. We call those vertical angles. This one you're going to notice has a little box in the corner. That means that it's a right angle, so we call these complementary angles. Number five, we're only looking at angles A and B. So this one right here, again, it's a right angle, so we call them complementary. And number six, they're not across from each other. They're not next to each other. They're not across from each other. They're not forming a line. They don't form a right angle. They are next to each other. So we just call these adjacent angles. We don't really talk. All right, so let's talk about identifying different relationships, what that means, and then we're going to set up an equation to solve for that missing angle. So in this first one, you can see that these two angles here, they form a straight line. So those are called angles on a line. This means that they add up to 180 degrees. Now on that line, you're always going to have that they either add up to 180, they add up to 360, they add up to 90, or they're equal to each other. All right, so those two angles, they add up to 180. So I'm going to take these two angles here. We have B and we have 50. I'm going to add them up. they're going to be equal to 180. So I'm going to solve this. I'm going to subtract 50 from both sides. So I have B equals, now 180 minus 50 gives us 130 degrees. So that's our answer. That's B. Number 2. This time we have two angles. If you notice, they form a right angle. That's what that box means in the corner. So these are called complementary angles. Complementary angles means they add up to 90 degrees. A right angle is 90 degrees. So I'm going to take these two angles here. We have B and we have 63. I'm going to add them up. When I do that, we get 90. So I'm going to subtract 63 from both sides. Now I'm going to use my calculator. I'm going to do 90 minus 63, which gives us 27 degrees. And that would be your answer. Number 3. This time we have two angles. They are across from each other. So we call those vertical angles. Vertical angles means they are equal to each other. So one of the angles is B, and that equals the other angle, which is 43. This may seem too easy, but that's actually the answer. There's nothing to solve there, and that is our equation. Number 4. This time we have three angles here. We have B, 23, and 244. Notice that they go all the way around that circle. So we call these angles on a point. Which means they add up to 360 degrees. A full circle is 360 degrees. So we're going to take those three angles. I have B, I have 23, and I have 244. I'm going to add them up to 360. Now, before I start solving, I'm going to take these two numbers, I'm going to add them together. So 23 plus 244 is 267. And we'll just make it a little bit easier to solve. So now I'm going to subtract 267 from both sides. So again, I'm going to use my calculator. 360 minus 267 gives us 93. That's a 3 degrees. All right, number 5. This time we're only looking at these two angles. There's nothing labeled in that one, so we're not going to be using that one. Okay, but notice that these two angles, they do form a straight line, so we call these angles on a line. Angles on a line, remember that means they add up to 180 degrees. All right, so we're going to take these two angles. We have 3x plus 18. That's one of the angles. And we're going to add the other one, which is just 93. We're going to set that equal to 180. So before I start solving, I'm going to combine these two numbers again. So 3x is just going to stay there. I need 18 plus 93, which is 111. Now I'm going to subtract 111 from both sides. So 3x equals, now I'm going to subtract 180 minus 111. I'm doing this all on my calculator, which is 69. Divide both by 3. So I'm going to hit divided by 3, which gives us 23 degrees. Now that's your answer for x. This doesn't say to go any further, but if you actually wanted to find that angle, you'd have to substitute x back in. We're not going to do that today, but that's what you would have to do if you were to solve for the actual angle. All right, number 6. Okay, this angle actually has 3 angles. We have 2 x's, an x and an x, and then we have this little box here which tells us that this is a 90-degree angle. As soon as you see that box, you should be writing 90 degrees. Now these 3 angles, they form a straight line I just drew. So these again are called angles on a line. When we have angles on a line, that means they add up to 180 degrees. So let's set up the equation and we'll solve for x. So we have 3 angles. We have x, and we have 90. They all add up to 180. So let's add x and x. Those are the same. Remember, that's actually 1x plus 1x. So 1x plus 1x is 2x's. And now we're just going to solve. So let's subtract 90 from both sides. So 2x is equal to 90. We're going to divide both sides by 2. So x is equal to 45 degrees. All right, last one. Number 7. These 2 angles, you can see they form a right angle with that box in the middle. So these are called complementary angles. That means they add up to 90 degrees because it's a right angle. So let's take those 2 angles. One of the angles is x plus 25. That's one angle. We're going to add the other angle, which is 2x plus 5. So we have 2 angles, and they add up to 90. So let's start solving this equation. We have an x here and a 2x. So remember, that's actually 1x. So 1x and 2x is 3x's. Then we have this 25 and this 5. So if I add those together, I get 30. Still equal to 90. We're going to subtract 30 from both sides. So 3x is equal to 60. We're going to divide both sides by 3. So x is equal to 20. Now again, this is only our value for x. It's not one of these angles. So if you wanted to solve for that, you'd have to put 20 in for that x and actually use PEMDAS to solve and find out what the whole angle is.